Hello, hello. Welcome to the Betaport stage. My name is Manuel. I'm founder of Novo Applied Futures. We're a time travel agency and consultancy based in Berlin. And during the last 2 hours, we hosted a short time travel session on the topic of e-mobility and sharing culture with amazing guests, experts from politics, innovation, tech, society, etc. And 4 amazing table future captains. And thank you to Betaport, who is hosting this event. Betaport is a sustainable mobility hub on demand, a great concept, and we're right in the middle of the first prototype of a Betaport. And our future captains will now share insights from our quick time travel. Besides the topic of e-mobility and sharing culture, we have 4 subtopics. And Florian Lüft from Envision Digital will share his insights from the session. Florian.
Manuel, thank you very much. And it was really a little bit tough to summarize that within only 10 minutes, but I hope we made it better or not so good. That's up to you. The first thing, if we talk about the future of charging infrastructure in the year 2035 or so, we were not quite sure if we will achieve everything that we predicted upon that year. Maybe the good news is that we might have no need for the classical way of infrastructure that we are discussing today. We were talking about if we achieve innovation as we expect it to be, we should have already inductive charging for electric vehicles in place. And maybe we already achieved also that streets are built in a way that charging can be automated while the cars are driving on these streets. So hopefully the classical way of building charging infrastructure will not be there anymore. Besides that, maybe for the innovators and entrepreneurs, there are a few new business models that we have been discussing. For one, we need maybe our automotive industry, because we discussed about why do we need chargers to charge the battery in every car. Wouldn't it be a suitable business model to just pass by at a place that we call a gas station today or a supermarket or whatever and just change the empty battery and fill in a fully loaded battery? Could be quite interesting and also be a sustainable way of extending the life cycle of each battery. Then we talked a little bit about universal charging. Why do we talk about chargers for electronic vehicles, cars only? Why don't we create chargers that are also able to charge your bikes, your cargo bikes? Maybe, Nico, we've been discussing about it yesterday, about our daughters. Maybe something of the gadgets that they have in the garden or something like that. Maybe also the DIY tools you're using in your garden. I saw the guys with the Akkuschrauber before, yeah? Why don't we charge everything on one charger? That could be also a suitable concept for the future. And then we discussed a lot about what can we do with data? What can we do with algorithms? How can we make energy usable in a more efficient way and predict maybe a little bit which energy we really need and which we don't need and help to avoid that we use too much energy that we normally don't need. Well, that was the future. You said we do the time travel, but in the short term, I think we need more boldness of politics. It shouldn't be, I think we are on a good way already, but what we really need is a commitment that it's not an option to create charging infrastructure. We need it as mandatory thing if you build new or if you do a refinement of existing buildings. Then it needs to be accessible for everyone. No matter if it's a public charging spot or a private one, it needs to be sure that everyone who wants to utilize electric cars or whatever is able to reuse that. We need to combine much more than it is today. The private charging infrastructure, especially in the landscape, not in the big cities. We've been discussing a lot about Berlin and maybe the topic that there's only public infrastructure possible here and there. And we need for sure to also create compatibility of tech standards. Today, it's impossible to implement chargers from different vendors in one multi-tenant building with more parking lots. And then for sure, but that should be obvious, we need to combine the whole discussion with really the mandatory topic of green energy. Charging an electric vehicle or whatever with anything besides green energy doesn't make any sense and should be really stopped immediately. Only by this, we will have the chance to really achieve also the decarbonization goals that we all want to have and to get really into this net zero topic that everybody's discussing. Overall, I think that was a major topic. We need also to encourage renunciation. I did also not know that word, but you made me think about that. And we need to combine mobility concepts new and create them new, instead of always trying to optimize the existing standard. Last but not least, I think it's up to us to change the mindset, to adopt to a new standard and a new world of mobility that will lead us to a new world of energy usage and energy consumption. Thank you.
Thank you, Florian. What was the key takeaway from your time travel?
I think the major topic for me as a player in software but also in charging infrastructure is that we need to think about, do we really need the classical infrastructure? And that was really a very valuable outcome of the discussion.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, our next future captain is Julian Menge from Senate Department for Environment, Transport and Climate Protection. Julius, the stage is yours.
Thanks a lot. We had a few minutes and 25 people discussing the future of urban logistics in cities like Berlin. How can it look like? How should it look like? What should the elements be? And actually, I'm quite happy that we didn't find a solution in yet 1 hour, actually, because otherwise I would have done my job wrong for the last decade, and actually I would be out of job for the next decade probably. So I'm quite happy that we had a lively discussion with a lot of elements, as you can be sure that urban logistics in an area, in every city of Europe, like Berlin, like London, like Paris, or all the other cities you can imagine, consists of various elements. It starts with every one of you receiving parcels, getting their garbage from their backyards, so cleaning the streets, bringing stuff to hospitals, it's bringing stuff to stores. Yeah, so there's a lot of different elements. It's the craftsmen that come to your home and repair your washing machine, as well as the delivery vehicles that go to the stores and bring the food there, for example. Yeah, so finding solutions for all of these elements is impossible in a timing like that. But what we managed was to describe elements of the future, and I think also what is necessary in a topic like that, elements that we don't want to have in the future of our cities, considering that topic of urban logistics. What we discussed was on various perspectives, like you find them on the map here. Yeah, so we was discussing about several social elements of the topic. The question of how can we be sure that everyone that needs goods becomes the goods, yeah, gets the goods. But is it reality in future that you receive the goods to your home? Do you need to get them in front of your door, or can you be walking for the last few hundred meters and go to a locker, go to a specific store and pick up the goods there? Is it the future reality that we still have a lot of different companies actually doing the same job in the city? Or is it a reality where we see more of bundling going on, more of white label technologies, for example, where one certain company takes over the job? Or is it just the case that we use the time of the day that we have more reliable, that we say, okay, if we need that kind of transport, do we need it to have all over the day, or can we just focus it on several hours and thereby also cut a bit morning or afternoon peak hours? Yeah? So there's different elements about how can we make social life livable, working in a city like Berlin, but in the same moment readjust processes that we're seeing. I was quite happy actually that we all in the end got the same understanding that also in future we will live in a world where no beaming, for example, takes place. Yeah, so there will be no replicator there where we just push a button and then everything falls out of the wall. But there will be still goods that we need to transport, things that we have visible, tangible. And as long as we got that, there will be transport in public space taking place. The question is, how can we deal with that? And there was a lot of discussion going on about technological aspects, using artificial intelligence, using drones for doing the work, for bundling more and better, getting rid of empty trips, or reducing at least the amount of spare space in vehicles going around in our cities. So I think there was a huge discussion about that, and very livable discussion, and also a very fruitful discussion on that. The good thing was we were not talking about one technology or perspective specifically, but we were trying to touch all the different elements that also included the question about how much space do we need for doing those services, for having those businesses in our cities. And I think we all had a kind of common sense saying that maybe the time where you just have one part or 1 square meter in public space and you just give it to one company for a certain amount of time, maybe that time is over. Maybe we need to think more about sharing the space, sharing facilities, sharing hubs. The topic of micro hubs, for example, was one of the big topics. And we had a quite clear understanding together that there's no option for every company to run facilities like that, but that we need shared facilities and that cities have a role in that. And I think that is also for me one of the key learnings and key understandings, that one of the roles that we already have in Berlin is like really also seen by the public, and that we need to work on that further. And yeah, that's what we're doing. So thank you very much everyone participating in the workshop, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Julius. One question to you. Talking about the city of Berlin, the long-term vision of the city of Berlin regarding logistics and mobility concepts. Do you see a lot of overlaps with the vision of the city and the points of discussion?
There's a lot of elements that we see in here, and a lot of things we're discussing. Not every element is fixed, and I think that is also the reality that we see in our cities these days. Technologies evolve so fast that actually you can't set a certain point and say that's it. So we need to go on in discussion. Like in the introduction, we heard the topic of the first iPhone that was introduced in 2007. Actually, if you think in terms of infrastructure, 2007 up to now is like no time at all. If you think of it in terms of mobile phones, that's like decades. That's like really ages. So bringing those visions together is like really one of the key topics, and that's what we're working on. A lot of the things that you see on the agenda are tackled by our long-term strategies, but also on a short-term strategy. Like for example, you see curbside management. This is like really one of the key topics. Actually, most of the European cities are discussing these days, because you recognize space is limited. So we need to handle space more reliable, and curbside management is like one thing on the agenda now.
Excellent, thank you. By the way, the framework and the method we're using is called future modeling, and it's exactly about what Julius is telling us. It's about connecting long-term, bold future scenarios with the here and now, and active decisions in 2021. Thank you, Julius, again. Our next speaker is Matthias Zankel from NUTS 1. Welcome.
Thank you, thank you. Can I have my DNA? It's over there.
It's over there.
Yes, we had also some very long and intensive discussions about the future of automated and connected driving in Berlin and overall. And at first we really focused on autonomous transport for people, and our result was that we see a very big potential here to reduce cars in cities. In most of the cases we need a combination with the sharing community. This means that more people are in one automated shuttle, or you can imagine that if somebody uses a car and wants to park it, the car doesn't park, and instead of it drives to the next driver. So we have more or less cars in the cities nowadays. Automated cars can give everybody a lot of individual benefits. For example, the people don't have to drive the cars anymore. When they drive to work or to the office for an hour, they can do the first calls in the car, which is the office maybe in future, and they can make phone calls, they can work, so you have a lot more lifetime back and can use this for other actions. Another point, of course, is you have a lot of more safety. I think it's fact that the automated cars make less mistakes than humans do, and we have a more safer traffic in the cities in the future. The automated cars, another advantage is that they will connect to each other. Maybe when there are accidents, then they give signals to each other, and the smart cars use other roads, and so the traffic is more fluent in the cities in the future. Of course, for the economic, it means more efficiency and more flexibility. Because of this, we have a lot of potential for the economic. We can create new business models, and I think autonomous driving is the basic for a lot of new businesses. This not only in the cities, also in the rural, in the landscape. We don't have much public transport, and therefore we have autonomous buses, autonomous shuttles without a driver, so we can give everybody to every time a mobility solution. And for this 24/7 mobility, we can give all humans and the economic a lot more flexibility, and hopefully more place of the city back, so everybody can go maybe through the streets, and there are no parking cars which need a lot of space. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthias. Have you been in the future before? Have you been time traveling before today?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Great.
Just last week I used an autonomous shuttle, and it's you sit in there, and at first you can't imagine that it is driving. There is also a person which looks after the shuttle and can drive in an emergency case. But when you sit there, it's very futuristic.
Great. Thank you, Matthias, for joining us. Last but not least, we're welcoming Carsten Hokema from SharePower.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing your insights from the time travel.
Well, our group was quite interesting because there were several ideas which partly were quite new for us. The main points that we have to think about while building a new sharing economy, sharing a new sharing culture, not only sharing economy, is responsibility and ownership. So we have been talking about the question, who is owning things when there is a sharing culture everywhere, when many things will be shared by many people. This is one point, so responsibility and ownership. And there was one quite striking idea right at the beginning that maybe in 10 years there won't be any sharing anymore because there is no private ownership anymore. So this was something that provoked me quite a lot, because we are building a sharing technology, sharing culture, and then when we will have a future without any sharing, how will we call this behavior then? So it's a little bit about society in general, it's a little bit about behavior in general, yes. And so there were some other quite interesting ideas, like the justice of access. So at the moment, you can have access to many very valuable things when you've got enough money, but the sharing technology, the sharing economy, and the sharing culture can offer more opportunities of access to any kind of valuable things. So maybe at the end of a new sharing culture, there will be more justice at the end, because people could be able to donate access to other people. As we can donate money to people today, as we can spend some money for friends which don't have enough money, we can actually then donate access to things which are valuable. This is quite an interesting idea for us, and we are thinking about that while we are planning and while we are designing our tool for sharing groups and for the sharing culture for every person at any place at any time.
Thank you, Carsten. Did you hear a really crazy, bold utopian idea which will keep you awake tonight and you probably will integrate in your business strategy?
Well, no, there was no that crazy idea. I think the craziest was right at the beginning when somebody says there won't be any sharing anymore in 10 years.
Great.
Well, maybe it's just another word for it then. Maybe. Because using things will always happen. So how do we call that using? Is it sharing? Is it renting? Is it whatever?
Yeah, I think the question is if we still own stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe this leads me to the final question, and I ask all future pilots to the stage. The final and last question to all of you is, do you think that a concept like Betaport is supporting the future ideas you collected during these last 2 hours? What do you think? Is this a concept of the future? Is it a missing building block of these scenarios you talked about?
If I can start, I'm quite sure that it is, because it fulfills a lot of needs that I see from a city perspective. It's like working CO2 neutral, mostly. I mean, you're working with wood. In a lot of things you can see that the material can be long-term used. We just had to talk about the long-term perspective of the wood usage, that after using it for the construction, you can use it for something else because it's reliable. And what I like is like really the idea of popping it up. Yeah, I mean, like really from my perspective, we have the long and ongoing discussion that, especially in urban logistics, you have a lot of use cases where you say, I need something for a certain amount of time, but not for the long run and not for eternity, but it's like for 1 month or something like that. Yeah, and to have a solution like that available, that is a cool thing. Yeah? So yeah, I like it. I like it also like from the outline. Yeah, so it's like really
great. Thank you. What's your opinion?
I think definitely yes. I think we need some points when the mobility comes together. Usually these are the train stations, but we also need points at other areas, and people need points to change the mobility system. And I think therefore it's a perfect solution.
Great.
Well, yes, I think Betaport is a quite good product as a hardware, because we are, as a software provider, we need places, we need space, and we need objects where to put them, where to store them. And 2 years before I met Urban Beta with Betaport, we had the idea of having sharing stations within the city, and the sharing stations could be a kind of point in quarters where people are living. So like in Kreuzberg, wherever the sharing culture is lively already, and so this could be a good piece of architecture within the city.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. So we strongly believe that processes and methods like future modeling and open conversations, participatory conversations, really spark these bold visions, and we strongly believe that we need to take action now, because otherwise it will be even hotter in the future than today. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you for the audience to watch and participate during the workshops. Thank you to Betaport again, and have a nice evening and enjoy the future.
Thank you.